Spring ball starting to wind down. Washington has finished its 11th spring practice.
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into another edition of the Locked On Huskies podcast. I'm Roman Tomashoff. That's Lars Hanson. He writes for Inside the Huskies. No, Lars, you are the new site editor for Athlon's Inside the Huskies. So congratulations to you on that. You know, it's a fun little way to put that in there. I am the site editor over with Huskies Wire. Thank you for making this your first watch or first listen today. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Lars, like I said, congratulations on the new role. That's awesome. We love to hear it. And Washington, they put on a show for you at their 11th spring practice, and it was highlighted by some of your guys in the defensive backfield. So where do you want to start with that?
Yeah, I mean, let's start off probably with Tristan Dunn. Yeah, well, I mean, one guy we haven't talked about at all, not necessarily at all this spring, but certainly not as much as, right, exactly. But a guy who has been making, plays, kind of been in the two deeps, but hasn't necessarily cemented. And I guess it's pretty accurate to say, because John Richardson said it after practice, and Vinny Sunseri echoed the same sentiments, where there's starters, but they're really air quotes. Like obviously Ephesians Prysock will be a starter and things like that, and Cam Fab. But other than that, everything is kind of fair game at this point. And but the one play that I wanted to highlight with Tristan Dunn was the interception that he had, I believe, off Will Rogers, right? It looked like it was a pass intended for.
I got it right here. No, it was off Demond Williams.
Oh, Demond Williams. Okay, but it was because it was intended towards Camden Sherman, as you eloquently pointed out to me, since I can't see very far. Keith Reynolds. Again, actually, that's a great segue. We'll keep this all in because my distance vision is so bad. Where Denzel's number 12, Keith's number 15, it all kind of blends together. Once you get like 40, 50 yards away. No, but it wasn't the receiver that made the play. It was a great play by Tristan Dunn, a great break on the ball, broke about a second and a half before the ball would have been caught. And that's something where probably last season, if he gotten the chance to play, he doesn't get his head around, right? Because that was a play where it was an out route and he's going back and then making a stop and break on the ball. That's something to where you could easily just, try and make sure you're not continuing to get beat deep. You look for the ball, whether you hear balls out or whatever, still making that read instinctively shows that he's understanding what his assignment is in this defense. And again, like we were saying with the offense yesterday, this is the time in fall camp where when you make those plays, they're actually more promising than they would be if it was on day one or day two, because that could have been a bad throw or a bad or miscommunication or something like that. So Tristan Dunn making these plays towards the tail end of camp is a promising sign for what could be to come in the fall.
So there are two things I want to touch on from what you just said. The first one is running the route for the receiver, because you're 100% accurate. That's exactly what happened, where he got his head around really quick. And Keith Reynolds, who is a really nice route runner, we've seen him be really shifty throughout spring camp and do a lot of nice things before the ball gets in his hands and after the ball's in his hands as well. He did a really good job of just mirroring the route and using the second thing I want to discuss, were his elite size and elite length to get that break on the ball and just really drape Keith Reynolds. And while, he's on the smaller side for a receiver, he's going to be doing the same things if he's asked to cover bigger players, if he's asked to come down and cover tight ends, and showing that flexibility, that versatility to stick in man coverage with some smaller, quicker guys like Keith Reynolds is just such an encouraging sign for his development, which is really nice to see. And another safety that we wanted to touch on briefly that had another really nice play today and actually ended practice with it being the final play was true freshman Peyton Waters, where he came down and made a great hit on another true freshman in Audric Harris, who caught a little in-breaking route over the middle. And Peyton came down and laid a really, really nice hit on him, got the ball out. I think it was Drew Fowler or somebody who jumped on it for the recovery. But that was another thing where we've been talking a lot about Peyton Waters throughout the course of the spring, where he's been super impressive for somebody that's 18-year-old true freshman. And the more we see from him, the more we're starting to like everything. We talked to Vinny Sunseri about him last week, and Vinny said, yeah, for one of these early enrollees, he's picked everything up really quickly. And coming out of high school, these are the things we liked about him. He's big, he's long, he's super intelligent. And once he gets his feet under him and once he learns what he needs to do, he's somebody that's going to be a playmaker. And he showed that today.
Yeah, and I think it's worth pointing out that Peyton also played all three played safety, a little bit of nickel, and far side outside cornerback. So I think having that kind of rounded understanding and playing the safety position kind of helps him understand the game of understanding routes, right? Where no matter where he is on the field, right? Because if you're just, if you're used to playing outside cornerback and then now you're coming in the middle, you understand what those receivers are trying to do on a typical route, right? Now, again, not every route is the same, but you understand the concepts of what each player on offense is trying to do. So as a safety, you can come down from the back end and read a lot easier. And football IQ is off the charts. I mean, I think that's been pretty clear throughout the spring where, they don't have a ton of bodies at safety, but also it's a true freshman making plays, not a true freshman just getting some snaps and getting his feet warm in the defense. No, it's almost kind of initiation by fire, and Peyton is walking like he's got ice in his feet. So, I mean, at least at this point in the spring, and again, now we always have to temper the expectations, right? Will they add somebody else at the position before fall camp, right? Who knows, right? But at least at this point, Peyton is playing himself. Now, again, fall camp could be, Paul Menke could come along and play just
Rashad Clark being another one.
Exactly. So there's plenty of young players in that room, but I think, and that's kind of why he wanted to, the benefit of enrolling early is you get that leg up, right? Where that's not to say Rashad Clark and the rest of the guys couldn't come along, but already having that first impression of the coaches in the defense, it's not like, hey, my position will translate well, my skills. It's like, yeah, but he's got a whole month ahead of you. I know it doesn't sound like much, but once you get into that second, third week in fall camp, when you start to actually get the two deeps and start preparing for the season, he's already been well up to speed, but those guys are just now getting up to speed. So I think that has also helped Peyton as well when in terms of his projectability, what we should see in 2024.
So speaking getting up to speed, and it's not like he hasn't been good or anything like that, but Ephesians Prysock had himself a really nice day too, where there was a point a couple of weeks ago where it felt like every single ball the receivers were winning, whether it was Denzel Boston, whether it was Jeremiah Hunter. But now we're starting to see the cornerbacks, and especially Ephesians Prysock, who made a couple of fantastic plays today, but the one in particular was he went full extension to get a PBU. I can't remember who the receiver was on the play, but he just went full extension and used his big long frame to be able to get in there and make a play and knock the ball out. And something that I noted specifically because when we talked to Thaddeus Dixon after practice on Tuesday, one of the things he mentioned was something I know it's going to be a real shocker that I mentioned this, that running the Patriots defense, they're going to have a lot more help over the top. And the corners feel comfortable getting more aggressive, getting up in receivers' faces, playing bump and run, doing some of these different things. And he had to make a little bit of recovery where he got beat on the play and just wasn't afraid to use his length and use his speed to be able to come back where he knew he might have some help on the play, but he did a really great job making the recovery and making the PBU.
Yeah, and it's a play that personifies kind of what his skill set and frame suggests, right? Where he's a guy who can get more physical at the line because I might give up a half second. I got the length and reach to go about to recover from that, right? When you show that on the play. But the one that actually kind of stood out to me was the one that followed it about, I don't know if it was the exact same series but it was pretty quickly following at least the next series where he goes and makes it looked like either a tackle for a lot or a very quick tackle. That's just how we say, right? On I believe it was a
TFL.
Yeah, and but the thing was, when we see John Richardson be so animated at practice, he wants his cornerbacks to be physical. It's almost like a way they pride themselves on being physical because, and I think to your point, that's why they have that help over the top. It's like, we want long cornerbacks. Again, you can play 5'11", 6 foot, and, make up for it. But Prysock's height, like you can't coach that. You can coach the heck out of it, but you can't coach that ability. And when you match it with his football IQ, and that's something where, again, you alluded to it earlier, where Denzel Boston's beat him. Jeremiah Hunter's beat him a couple of times. But it's almost like he uses that as fuel to the fire. Like, all right, you know what? You got me today, but watch tomorrow, right? And today was an example of a tomorrow where, that's the all-pro cornerback, or not the all-pro, the all-conference, type cornerback that we can expect. Now, can he duplicate that and continue that with the scheme? Again, that's just what we want to see. But again, in spring camp, you'd rather have that ebb and flow than just the defense flat out dominating.
Right. Lars, with that being said, let's jump over to the other side of the ball and talk about some of the receivers. Right after a message from our good friends over at Monopoly Go. I've been told I'm a competitive person. Lars, is that true?
Yeah, it's pretty accurate. It's a pretty accurate way to describe it.
we don't need to go into, all the things that were going on while I was at practice and me just being competitive and being a sports fan and all that. Yeah, because I do have a competitive side. We all do. And my competitive side is a big fan of Monopoly Go. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times. It's a great twist on Monopoly, where you play on not one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities that bring you big money. But the best part is messing with my friends. I can charge them rent on my iconic properties, just like classic Monopoly, but now I can also heist their vaults of riches for myself, and the leaderboard show me who the biggest Monopoly tycoon is. But it's not just my competitive side that loves it. You can team up with friends and people all around the world in time tournaments to earn huge rewards. So get in the game and join your friends. Download Monopoly Go now free on the App Store or Google Play. And we also got to give a shout out to our good friends over at Game Time, because with killer last minute deals, all in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets, which is great news for me because I'm going to visit a couple new MLB ballparks this summer, St. Louis being a one that I'm really looking forward to, going to be there in a couple of weeks. And I'm really excited to use the Game Time app to buy my tickets while I'm there, because they have last minute deals where you can save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and so much more. They got flash deals where you can save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. And they got seat views so you can get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, which is great when you go into a new ballpark like me. You can take the guesswork out of buying tickets at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKDOWNCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. All right, Lars, I want to jump into the receivers a little bit, because one guy that we saw have a really, really good day with Damon Williams was Rashid Williams, and he caught two 20-plus yard touchdown passes. Here on my notes, I have a 26-yard score that happened in 11-on-11 and a 23-yard score that came in one of the 7-on-7 drills. And it's really nice to see Rashid continue to come along. And one of the visitors that we saw from the transfer portal, which we'll get into a little bit more, was Arizona State wide receiver Elijah Badger, who did look like he was at practice today. And moving forward, if that's somebody who does end up committing to Washington, he'd probably usurp and just take a bigger role from Rashid, who might, in 2025 end up being a much bigger piece of the puzzle. But it's really nice to see Rashid coming along and just forming that chemistry with Damon, of all people.
Right, and I think it's kind of symbolic of who they're targeting. With targeting Badger, the type of you're expecting it's a 1+1, right? Where you're expecting him to come in and really play a lot this season, and if he happens to stick around, so be it. But Rashid Williams and Damon Williams are going to be here for at least 2 or 3 years together, right? In terms of how long you would expect both of them to stay until they graduate, or potentially even declare 1 year early for the draft. So with that being said, that's a good sign for, again, we don't necessarily want Damon to start, just because, again, when you have a fifth-year grad transfer quarterback, it's not that we don't want him to start. I should clarify what I'm saying, but just when you have a fifth year come in, you want Damon to push and get that experience, but still have the coaches go with the veteran, and then you come in next year and you're almost like a veteran, where you weren't playing all 12 or whatever games like Will was going to play, but you were preparing just like him, right next to him, which we've seen a lot in spring camp, where they seem to be very much in, hey, Will's not necessarily teaching him, but they're both necessarily trying to soak up just as much. And it's not that DeMarcius isn't, but you can kind of see the succession plan building, where you want to get those connections going. And so when we go into 25, it's, Rashid and them, they gotten plenty of snaps together. They gotten plenty of connections together. So it's not necessarily as much of a break-in process as it would be if, Will gets all the snaps and Rashid's playing a lot this year, and then DeMarcius has kind of got to get a catch up, if you will.
Sure. Where I see where you're going with that. But the biggest thing I've noticed when it comes to Rashid, at the very least, is just the flexibility that they've been looking for in just a guy that can line up all over the field. Where when he came in, I thought he was going to end up being more of one of those bigger slot receivers, where kind of in the mold of what we saw Jalen Polk do in 2022, where he's reliable. He can do a lot of different things for me, but he's going to be kind of pigeonholed into that one role. And seeing him move outside and do a whole lot more this spring is really nice. And it just shows his development. And another guy who I obviously see way more in the slot just due to his size and his route running ability and some of those different things is Jason Robinson. Jason Robinson had one of the better catches of the day in the one-on-one periods where I can't remember which cornerback he beat, but he just went streaking down the field after making a really nice move. And believe it came from Will Rogers, but he dropped the ball just right into the middle of his hands, and he had to make a little bit of a fingertip catch to pull the ball in, but pulls it in for a touchdown. And he's another guy where I've been watching his progression, just like we talked about him a little bit in Audric Harris in the first segment, where those are two guys who we don't necessarily expect to contribute this year, but it's really nice to see them continue to grow and continue to make plays. And, one-on-ones are, this is going to sound contradictory, but I swear there's a point here. They're meaningless to a certain extent because obviously that's not how the play is going to work when it's actually a game. But at the same point, it gives these players so much room to not only grow and battle and compete against one another, but it gives them the opportunity to refine little parts of their game. And for somebody like Jason, who's won in certain ways for his entire high school career, he's going to have to do some different things at the college level, and he can work on those in one-on-one. So it's really nice to see him make a play like that and just really show off just how much he's learned so far this spring.
Right, and I'm glad you mentioned Audric Harris in that same breath because they do two different things, right? Where Jason Robinson is more of a polished route runner than Audric Harris is. And again, these are no slights, right? But it's like Jason Robinson's strength is his route running and kind of to a degree his elusiveness. And then Audric Harris has got the size and speed. Like I think they're both fast, right? But I wonder in a straight line speed who wins that one. I'd be really curious to see if we can.
I'd probably go with Audric Harris. That dude's got burners, and Jason Robinson's not slow.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So when I say Audric Harris' strength is his speed, that's not saying Jason Robinson is like a slow, small, possession catcher, right? But we can both see where they can improve their game. And so to your point, when they have the opportunity to kind of hone their skills, like, well, Jason Robinson, we know he can kind of out route people, but can he add the physical part? Can he, get the positioning side of it right? And then Audric Harris, same kind of on the different side of the coin where, okay, we've seen you be able to break away, but can you run a crisp route and actually not have to break away because you're already there half a second before, so that way you're catching it in stride versus having to make a leaping catch. So again, like you said, we're not expecting them to play. Everybody probably can get 4, right? That's if you're a freshman and they staff likes you, especially under this staff, right? With the way Jedd Fisch has talked about freshmen, they'll certainly get 4. Now, do you get 5, 6, 7, 8, 9? Then that's kind of a determining factor. And where do we want to stagger the progression in the room, right? Because at some point, somebody's going to have to break that mold, maybe play like 8 or 9 games, right? Where you have to burn the red shirt. And then you have one of those other, because you have to stack the classes at some point from a development progression standpoint.
You're absolutely right there. And just one person that I think we need to mention real fast who had another really good day is Jeremiah Hunter, where he's somebody, and I think this was the first time I've made a note of this, at least this spring, where we've seen him and Denzel Boston on the field together. And we saw what is probably going to be the majority of the ones for right now, barring changes on the offensive line, which seem to be coming with something else we're going to get into in just a minute. But we saw both those guys on the field for the first time together. And while it was only for a series or two, it was really exciting to see because both of those guys have been so good all spring long, and finally seeing them get the chance to work together, work with Will Rogers is really exciting when you think about what this offense, if it gets just average offensive line play, can be.
Right, exactly. And that's the thing. Like, it doesn't have to be Joe Moore award-winning offensive line, right? Again, it would be nice, right? Maybe 2 or 3 years down the line, you get back up to that point. But really, like we said on Wednesday's show, just give Will Rogers or even Devon Williams, right? Just 2.5, 3 seconds. They're elusive enough in the pocket where they can both buy enough time to extend a play and then huck it downfield or find the open target, whoever that may be. But yeah, the offensive line, again, we'll get to it. But again, it's. And that's kind of what's hard to judge with all this stuff, right? Where a lot of these guys could look better, right? I wonder, if you give them last year's offensive line, how much different is Will Rogers in this receiving core than what Michael Penix and that trio of horsemen would have done? We'll never know, right? But again, you're at least seeing the progress in all these guys that you want to see. They're developing the chemistry. Then you just got to accept the fact that, again, yeah, there's going to be 3 or 4 sacks, and then we'll see a touchdown highlight and then cut out from that. Yeah, there's 3 sacks before that play.
So, Lars, with that being said, we got to move on a little bit because we hinted at it, and there was some bad news in the transfer portal along the offensive line today. And we'll get there right after a message from our good friends over at FanDuel. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. You can bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook, and I'm going to refrain from talking about the Celtics today after just having to watch that devastating loss. The Heat hit 23 3-pointers. Not going to get into that. That hurt. But what I will say is if you want to make some NBA bets, one team that I think might make a deep playoff run, hey, with a Husky connection, the Minnesota Timberwolves, where Jaden McDaniels has been lights out so far. So, Lars, some unfortunate transfer portal news that we hinted at a couple of days ago on the show. SMU tackle Marcus Bryant has officially committed to Missouri after what, we had heard that he was committed, that he was close to announcing, and that he, at least behind the scenes, might have committed to the coaching staff. But looks like he goes to Missouri, so Washington's going to have to look elsewhere on the offensive line. And there were some struggles today up front. There were a whole bunch of botched snaps as well.
Yeah, and that's kind of what's unfortunate. Is you can always say the reinforcements are coming to a certain degree, but then, okay, when you do have, again, right, D'Angelo Titiali, right, where that's a good starting foundation, right? We discussed that on the show. It's a good depth reserve piece, but we're talking 4, 5, 6 offensive linemen needing to come in, and you're still only at 1. And now it's not to say that other bodies aren't there, and probably certainly more bodies will enter the portal. We saw even a couple in the last couple of days from some SEC schools. So there are possible solutions out there, but the longer it drags out, the more it becomes, okay, well, who is going to be the reinforcements? Because when you get reinforcements and they're not necessarily at the caliber that Marcus Bryant would have been, right? Where that was one reason why you go after it, like a tackle like that, where he's a key piece and you can just plug and play on the left tackle, not have to worry about flipping Drew as a party. And your problem is at least solved on Will Rogers' blind side or Devon Williams' blind side. But now you kind of have to start back somewhat fresh, right? Where, again, at this point, we hadn't heard a ton of current linemen that are in the portal that have also scheduled visits, right? In terms of no concrete names, at least that have publicly visited. So now you're getting after spring camp or towards the back end of spring camp, trying to not patchwork, but you're obviously not getting the top guys that you wanted. So how can you backfill it and still get adequate results in the fall?
Absolutely. And that's the thing where we don't, and that's the hardest part about this is we don't know, because we don't know what visits are being set up. We don't know who might be coming in. Where with Titiali, it was really nice. Whereas, he's visiting. Oh, that's interesting. He just entered the portal the other day. And then that night, as we were recording the show, he committed. Oh, there you go. That's a nice piece to have, where we haven't seen a whole lot of that. And it's nice where, and especially when we talk about all the botched snaps that we saw today, where it seemed to be growing pains more than it is anything else, where Zach Henning's still learning about snapping, about some of those things, while Damon Williams and Will Rogers are both taking snaps under center for the first time in a long time, especially when you think about Rogers, who spent so long in the air raid system that it's going to take some getting used to. And this is the first time we just ever really saw that particular area of the growing pains, where the defensive line has overwhelmed the offensive line a whole lot over the course of spring practice. But it's just one of those things where you want to see when those guys are going to come in, because at a certain point, you just got to make sure those bodies are coming in the door. And it's not just in terms of the passing game as well. It's with the running backs too. And we talked to Coach Scottie Graham today, who raved about Adam Mohammed. And this is one story that I wanted to tell, where you and I got to talk to him for just a couple of seconds after he was done giving his press conference. And one of the things that I asked him over the course of his press conference was, were you surprised that more people weren't on Adam Mohammed coming out of Apollo High School, just when you look at how big and how physical he is? And he misheard me a little bit, just to give the everydayers the full story. And, and when you and I were talking to him, I said, so I was wondering about his time in high school. And when you saw him, were you shocked that he wasn't just a bigger recruit? And he said, no, I said, shh, don't tell anybody. And that was just so fantastic to hear, because he's been so impressive, and he's somebody who we saw get reps with the first team today. And while that's not something we expect to happen this fall very often, at the very least, he's somebody who is such a promising piece that we've seen throughout spring camp so far. And you got to make sure that you can run the ball effectively, not only just for Jedd Fisch's offense to be effective, but to win games in the Big Ten.
Well, the one thing that's really stood out about Adam Mohammed is its pass catching ability, where we've seen that where Jonah Coleman's taken a number of checkdowns, and that's something that's clearly going to be integral in the offense. So him picking that up already as a freshman, he seems like a natural pass catcher out of the backfield. Like, it doesn't seem like a problem for him in terms of his positioning. He knows where to be in his assignment. We rarely heard Scottie Graham say, Adam, you're doing the wrong thing or something like that, where there hasn't been any complaints like that. And to your point, Scottie Graham raved about him for a reason. And so, again, I could honestly see him getting at least 4 games because, again, Sam Adams is, still working back. Cameron Davis also working back. We got to talk to him. So clearly he's closer than Sam Adams is.
He said he'd be cleared in the fall. That's one thing he did tell us today. Sorry, I just want to make sure we got that noted there.
No, exactly. You're absolutely correct. And so with that being said, you still always want to have that extra depth, where we saw it last year, right? Where we didn't want to think that Tybo Rogers was going to have to be in there. And then, because the other one is Daniel Ngata. I think that's the one that, to me, what is his role going to be? Because we saw him as a decent returner last year, but it seems like there is a role, especially as a pass catcher in this offense. So if Adam Mohammed can somehow usurp Daniel Ngata, which, again, caveat being it's still spring camp and not fall camp, where Ngata might get those reps that Adam Mohammed is getting with the 1s and 2s now, just so he's up to speed in college, that can kind of reward him for enrolling early. So yeah, you want to reward him, but then also when push comes to shove in the fall, is Daniel Ngata getting those snaps? I wouldn't be surprised, but that doesn't in any way pour water on what Adam Mohammed has been doing this spring.
Absolutely. And that's one of the other things that's exciting about Adam Mohammed, where, just to compare to some of the other freshman running backs that we've seen over the last, I don't even want to just go back to last year. I want to just go back through to even when Cam Davis came in back in 2019, just over like the same period of time. And if you want to think back as far back as Myles Gaskin, I think that's a fair comparison, where just not in terms of the player, let me be clear, but in terms of the body type and what he is, because Myles is just on a different level as a player with his instincts, some of the other things. But when you look at what he is now, and just another phrase that Scottie Graham gave us today, he said in a year or two, when he gets up to 220 pounds, he's going to be a lunch money kid. And the always just incredible Mike Varell just said, what's a lunch money kid? One of those, when you're in high school and somebody says, give me your lunch money, that's gonna be what Adam Mohammed's gonna be on the field. And that was just a fantastic quote from him. So you want to make sure that you can protect that guy, and you want to work him in early, but you want to make sure that if you're working him in early, and even if you want to give him a heavy workload in the games that you're going to use him, that you want to make sure he's protected. And you can't do that. And with the offensive line group the way that it is right now, you need to make sure that there's just more experience up there, because all the guys in the room are very promising. Paki Fina, who was celebrating his 18th birthday, and the whole team sang him happy birthday after practice, which is really nice. Michael Watkins, Adam Mohammed's teammate, Justin Hilkmo, when he gets here in the fall, who's somebody who looks really physically impressive that we've seen, visiting through a couple of the spring practices. All these guys, Kelly Tafai, Sione Fasolo, Elisha Jaquette, all these guys that have really, really exciting upside, they don't have the experience, or in some cases the muscle needed yet to be able to compete along the offensive line. So you want to make sure that you can get these guys in the room. And that's why losing Bryant, to bring it full circle here, was such a tough loss.
Yeah. And not only that, but because everything appeared, I mean, you and I both for separate reasons had heard, that it was, again, imminent. Or at least somewhat imminent, right? Where, again, he received a couple crystal balls, all signs pointed to it. But, kind of one thing that we hinted at least on Wednesday's show, might have been Tuesday's show, in terms of the transfer portal and just getting guys in and then securing them. They've clearly been able to get guys out on campus for a visit. The problem is when those guys leave, whether it's planned or not, right? Where some of these guys are coming in and, hey, you know what? Let me just make my decision here, call it a wrap, we're good.
Yeah.
Once they either go back home or take another visit, like a la Philip Leedy, then it becomes, well, man, going all the way back out to Washington, or, might as well just, decide between these two or what have you. And again, both of the commits, right, where Philip Bleedy goes to Auburn and Marcus Bryant goes to Missouri, both of those guys, proximity-wise, didn't end up traveling very far. Now, not saying distance is going to be a factor, but some guys it is, right, where if you got a kid or family and relocating and things like that, it's theoretically harder to travel out to Seattle for 7 games, right? Because that's what they want to have in terms of home games per season, is 6 or 7 games ideally. So yeah, you get the benefit of going to an Ohio State away game, but it's not the same as a home game, right? Because let's say you're going to play in Ann Arbor, you're going to play in North, wherever you want to go. Yeah, it's closer in proximity to where these guys' families are, but they're going to the team bus and then back on a plane an hour later, and they're on the road to Seattle, or in the air to Seattle. It's not the same when it's a home game, and yeah, you get to go back to your apartment, hang out with the family, spend Sunday together. It's just not the same. And so, until that the world of college athletics changes to semi-pro, where you can stay back and stay with your family for a couple of days and then fly back for the team meeting on Monday. Like that's not necessarily how it works in college, where in the NFL guys maybe on a bye week could do that.
Lars, with that being said, thank you as always for being here. Thank you to the Everydayers for tuning in. We really do appreciate your support. And a reminder, Lars, you are going to be missing the show on Thursday night for Friday and everything, where I will be joined by Cameron Michelle and Ben Glassmeyer, 2 of my fantastic writers with me over at Huskies Wire. We're going to be doing a live breakdown with draft bits and everything from the first round of the NFL draft on Thursday night after the draft is complete. So please make sure that you don't miss that, because we're going to have so much fun. We're going to take questions, do the whole 9 yards. And the best way to make sure that you don't miss that is by subscribing wherever you get your podcast, whether that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. We're there. We're everywhere. We're updating this channel with new content every single day. So please make sure to, again, hit that subscribe button, click that little bell so you never miss when we go live, when we post a new video of any kind. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please feel free to leave a comment down below. We try to get back to as many of you as we possibly can. If you're audio only, please leave us a 5-star review, as it does really help the show out a lot. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will talk to you on Thursday.